we're so glad that you're with us this evening. We're very much looking forward to our weekend seminar this evening, and then 2 sessions tomorrow. Get to spend lots of time with one another, and then we're looking to wrap things up as part of our Sunday morning gathering time. So again, just appreciate everybody being here. We are so blessed to have Samson Ling available to present this material and lead us in discussion and ideas over the coming days. We originally had invited Samson to present this material at Camp Oma at the Prime Timers Week. And it was a great time. We have a little bit more time to unpack some ideas and concepts and talk about strategies. And we came out of that and we're like, this is really, really good stuff, and we need to get this out to more people. So the second wave of this was at the men's retreat that we had in September. And same thing, it wasn't the same material, it was the same general material, but we came out of that with, we now need to deliver this to our congregations, and we do know other congregations are doing the same thing, and we wanted to then move to this format. So this is our third wave, if you will. This is not our last, because this is the material that we're going to be, what we're going to be talking about is very practical, very useful, action plans that we need to put in place. And speaking to our members at Waterloo, and I know they're welcome to other congregations, is that we really want to take hold of this and help our families in very challenging environment for raising our families, for being adequate representatives, and most importantly, to make disciples out of our future generations. So before Samson comes up to begin the seminar, let's go to our Father in prayer. Our wonderful Holy Father, we do thank you for this time this evening. All those that have been able to join us as we look hard at the materials, the subject of making disciples in the generations that follow us. And Father, we just ask a special blessing on Samson. We're just thankful that he has been willing to study this in depth, to gather all his materials and the thoughts and ideas that he wants to present. Father, just bless him as he leads us through this, that what it is he is intended to share with us and lead us in, that he is able to do that in a way that is effective and in a way that creates action for us. And Father, in all things we want to glorify you. We want to magnify you and your Son Jesus, and we want to give praise and thanksgiving for the life of your Son Jesus and the salvation we have through him. And bless us now, Father, and it is through Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
I set myself a timer. I'm getting smarter. The trick is that will I ever look at my timer? So I can set it if I don't look at it. Okay, start. As you know, the church's been, I say the church's been very good in terms of holding to the Great Commission. In Matthew chapter 28, when they say, go and make disciples. Go into all nations because authority has been given to Jesus. So go into all nations and make disciples, right? I think the church has been very good of doing that, but when you think about that, making disciples it's not a passive thing, isn't it? When make is not something you sit down and then things will make itself. Make is that you take action. But when you think about making disciples making, I mean, obviously you have to have credibility. You have to have credibility to the people you talk to before you even tell them anything about gospel. You got to let them know that you want to know them, you want to care about them before you want to communicate the gospel to them. But then think about our family. Where are you going to get that kind of credibility with you that your children and grandchildren been with you since the day they are born. So I really want us to start thinking about making disciples within our family. So you don't have to cross the ocean. You don't have to go anywhere. I think when we did the Prime Timer Week, just within the room of the we probably had maybe 15, 16, 17 people at the Prime Timer. We just counted how many kids and grandchildren we had. It was well over 100. Just within that people in that group. And I said, when was the last time we as a church converted 100 people? And then it was kind of like, wow. So I said, not just our kids and grandkids, but think about all the young people that are within our congregation. How many hundred is there? You don't have to go. You already have credibility. You already know these people. They already know you. You are their daddies. You are their mummies. And so we start looking into that, and we start talking now. The Prime Time a week, we have 4 days to go through the materials, and was a lot less. So I had all the studies that I used mainly. There are 3 main ones. They're Christian studies, and we'll talk a little bit about those. But outside of that, there are hundreds of resources I had to go to. One thing that our governments are very good is tracking young people. Another thing, but they're good at tracking, so there's a ton of statistics. But the problem is that they don't know what to do with that. They just tell you the bad news, and then you got to go figure out how to take the bad news, pretty much, right? Because every study, I look at all the government. I've looked at, I don't know, dozens of studies from the government, Ontario as well as federal government. They always finish to say more studies are needed. I said, oh my goodness, when are we going to stop? Kids are dying. And when are we going to stop and do something for them? So I'm glad you're here tonight. So what we decided to do is that we're going to try to focus on, and this weekend, we're going to talk about family. We're going to talk about kids. So we're going to go through that. Now, my neck can only turn so far, right? So, and my eyesight is not as good. So there are 2 screens, one over there, one over here, and the mic is here. So I'm going to have to move around a bit. Why are we here? Because we want to be instruments, so we'll talk about that. Because we love the church and we love a family. And we want our grandchildren, I mean, that's a key. And you're going to see in the survey, this speaks clear and loud that we want our children and grandchildren to become disciples. And we want to have an action plan. You're not here just because you're in school, that you're required to take this course, and by the time you leave the door, you forget. Then I will ask you, probably go home, watch TV. You're well better use of your time than being here. We're here because we want to take action. This is going to compel us to do something. And of course, we enjoy fellowship, being so many of you here. What will we be doing tonight? We're going to be looking at the challenges that our children are facing. And I almost guarantee I can tell you, I've been working with young people for 40-some years now. And even me, when I was looking at the survey, looking at study, looking at all this, I was surprised. I did not know the challenges that our children are facing. And I did not get to the extent of what they had to deal with and trying to put it together. And it was just overwhelming. So tonight, we're going to do that. And we're going to take a look at what's my role then. As a parent, what's my role? If I know that, then what do I need to do? Tomorrow morning, though, because we want to do something, so we're going to brainstorm. So you got the information tonight. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, we'll come back. We're going to split into groups. There'll be questions that are structured for you to discuss and come up with some solutions, and then pizza. Yeah. And then Saturday afternoon, we're going to take a look at the actions that we have, and then we're going to try to coalesce and try to condense them and come up with maybe the top 3 to 5 actions we as a church will take. Now, that doesn't mean that your family want to do something different in addition to that, right? And Sunday morning Bible class, we're going to talk about examples from families in the Bible. And then Sunday morning, the sermon is going to be about raising children in a Christian home. So that's the agenda. How are we getting at this? And it just doesn't matter whatever conversation you have when you discuss what's right and what's wrong, what should we do, you always have to have a foundation of something. If you don't, who decides what's right and what's wrong? I mean, you can talk till your mouth is dry, but my bearing is this direction, your bearing's that direction. We can both be right, because that's yours and that's mine, right? So I'm saying that for us, you gotta have to find something that you say is right. So our bearing is the Lord in His Word. That's the authority. So everything we're looking at, that's the basis. Lots of discussion, lots of talking. Open-minded, that's going to be the toughest things for you guys. Maybe even worse for guys than women, I don't know. Because we look at something, we instantly go on to fix it, right? For men, we instantly want to fix it. Women, they tend to look back, they talk about it, they chit-chat, they might have a cup of coffee, a tea, a cookie, and then they look at the thing, right? So, but open mind is going to be very difficult for you guys. It was very difficult for me. Because you read something, you're already making up your mind as what's wrong. So please try not to do that. And try to seek understanding. Because if you don't understand the problem, you can't fix it. Here tonight is seek understanding. So do not pass judgment. As much as I can ask and beg you and plead with you, do not pass judgment. Get the stat, get the fact, look at them first. Understand that first. And then look into our hearts, see what we need to do. And again, lots and lots and lots of prayers, right? Lots and lots and lots of prayer. Holy Spirit is smarter than all of us. What you're going to leave with? A better understanding of challenges that they face in their faith journey. And I really want all of us to have a renewed commitment to the Great Commission, particularly with our family and, of course, our personal commitment to take action. When we did a prime time a week, one thing that I really loved that we did was each of us took half an hour. We found a quiet corner, each of us. We took a piece of paper, and the instruction was to pray and pray and pray. And then I want you to write down 3 to 5 things that you committed personally to God that you're going to do. And you don't need to share with anybody else. No one's going to ask you, because you are committing to God of what you wanted to do, not to anybody else. So a personal commitment. So the 3 major areas we tackled tonight. First one is the current conditions of youth in Canada. What's happening to them? What are they doing? What conditions are they mentally in particular? What conditions are they in now? All that is secular sources. So all of that is coming from the Library of Parliament, coming from various ministries, coming from Psychology Today, so a lot of reputable magazine. I wasn't going to dig down all the social media stuff that comes through. You have no credibility. So I check the sources, I go by, look at all the references, making sure they're credible, and if I can, I compare other things, right, to find, making sure it is not a one-off kind of thing. Then second thing is that 2 studies that I print them out there on the table. There are 2 studies really focused on Canadian churches. And because I am associated with the Youth for Christ in Canada, and so I have access to those studies. And they were done by Canadian churches on Canadian youth that grew up in the church, which is, I have never seen anything done specifically for Canada. Most of the time is U.S. studies, and then we kind of extrapolate. And then within that study as well, it talked about Christians' youth, what influenced them staying and going, and talk about what parents would be doing. So that's the 3rd study that I use. It looked at what parents are doing, because they are the largest influencer for our youth staying within the church. So let's tackle the first one. I'm just talking about where the information comes from. So Ontario Drug Policy, CAMH, is a center of addiction and mental health. And so the 2 studies I'm referring to, the hemorrhaging faith is one, and then renegotiating faith is second one, and then the third one is parenting faith. So you can see there are several thousand kids that were interviewed and surveyed, so it was very credible across the country. Big picture. Can you see that? I can see it. So the reason that our children are facing a crisis, when you think back in the 50s, when it kind of early days, remember Ronald Reagan, that's a drug, the broken home ones, the divorces became more prevalent, almost more acceptable. And so the kids were dealing with broken family. They started to deal with this idea about parents, my mom and dad, they don't live in the same place and they got shipped back and forth, right? But still very localized, right? It only happened to that family. And then the drug war came, and then the drug became prevalent, and everybody's attention was fighting drugs. And again, that's fairly localized. You say, I have a drug problem, I have an addiction problem, or I know a friend that. It is not this challenge that we see now through the internet. You mean think about the internet, which is a neutral tool, but through the internet, children are being exposed and being challenged in ways that you would never be able to imagine. It's not localized anymore. It is international. It is like anybody. Your child can be speaking to someone from Tibet on very intimate subject. There is nothing, there isn't a central agency say, hey, this is not okay for kids under 10, or this is not okay for this to happen. There are no policemen per se in the internet. So the problem now they face is so prevalent, and we'll take a look at how prevalent that is. And the other thing that I didn't realize, and the more I look into it, is that the people that are driving this have more money than the central banks of the world combined. These are all the big businesses, the Meta, the TikTok, the X now is called. These are major corporations, billions and billions of dollars they pour into the market for the purpose, it is all legal, for the purpose of targeting a certain audience. And the problem is that the audience they target are the 12-year-olds. 12-year-old is very kind of strategic for these companies because 12-year-olds, they haven't been able to form their own reasoning yet. So, right, for you will look at it and say, well, this is a scam. Or you look at it and say, well, there's something wrong with the piece of information. But 12-year-old, they haven't been able to develop that. So really like to get them. Of course, I'm 66 years old, 67? No, I'm 60. Well, I'm 60-something. I forgot how old I am. I know, I'm either 66 or 67, one or the other. But for me, if they get me, they might only get another 10 or 20 years at the most, right? If they get a 12-year-old, they've got another 70 years of this 12-year-old. And they're easy to get. So they target them. And they target them, and it's legitimate. Like, it's okay for them to target 12-year-old. And the amount of money they put in there is just obscene. And because we're in the world, right? Remember the challenge politics, we're in the world but not of the world. Well, unfortunately, the world is contaminating the church, right? So a 2022 study and show that there are major issues that church face are the fundamental pillars are being eroded, right? So it's a inconsistent biblical ethics is also evidence with more evangelical embracing a secular worldview in the area of homosexuality, gender identity, but certainly in the inspiration authority of the Bible. And we'll take a look at those trends as well with particular data point that you can take a look at. And we're losing young people. The first study from the Southern Baptist Conference, which is the biggest Christian organization in North America, but it's the 2001 data. I just confirmed with them that the data hasn't really changed. They are losing in around the 70 to 75, 79% of young people by the time they hit college. That's a huge number. And then the second study, Lifeway, in 2019, again, interviewed 2,000 adults, young adults, And they're saying by the time they hit kind of in their 20s, 67%, two-thirds of them would have left the faith. So it's comparable in terms of data point. Whether it's a percent here, percent there, it's a significant number of young people. Now, good thing to say, Jamie and I were just comparing notes. This particular congregation, we are faring a lot better in terms of keeping our children in the faith. So that's a big picture. So let's go to the condition of youth in Canada, the mental health. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't really translate as well. But anyway, in Ontario, okay, now no judgment, right? And I don't want you to fall off the chair. I don't want your jaw to drop. These are pretty daunting numbers, but we just need to understand it. In Ontario, 4.1 million kids under 25, over 300,000 of them are prescribed with psychotropic drugs. To me, that is obscene. But they're being prescribed a drug because they've been diagnosed with a mental illness. Over 300,000 kids in Ontario. So here is the drug type of drugs that they use, and that's 7.5%. About 70% of those cases, the mental illness had developed before they were 18 years old. I mean, think about your kids, right? How old are they? Think about 18, my goodness, 18, I'm just trying to figure out where things are. Life satisfaction not only decreased between 2018 and 2020, so you can't blame the pandemic, it's because pre-pandemic. It was the lowest among youth than any other age group. And the chart below is looking at male and female, and looking at asking the question, how your mental health, good, very good, excellent, not so good, and bad. So the top line is male. Okay, so this is 2015 to 2021. So we're just crossing the pandemic around here. Okay, so 2015 for male, it went from about 82%, it dropped to about 72%. Okay, so it dropped about 10 points over that time. The female, so this is age 12 to 17, okay? So female, it went from about 76%, it dropped to about 52%. And the worrying trend to me is that not only the females being affected more dramatically than guys, is that the curve isn't plateauing. As a matter of fact, it's indicating it's almost accelerating. And so this is not just one study. So we're going to take a look at some of the data as well that confirm it just to me is very worrying. That our girls are not just, they're not feeling good mentally. There's something that's affecting them, right? So what are things that are affecting them? What do they look like? Substance abuse, rate of opioid death among Ontario teens and young adults tripled from 2014 to 2021. And the hospital emergency visit quadrupled in that time. Now, only 50% of the deaths were diagnosed with having a problem. That means that the other half that visited the hospital or died were experimenting or accidental. Or someone, while they went to a party, someone slipped something in their drinks and they didn't realize they were taking fentanyl. They have no idea. So the other 50%, when you say, well, my kid doesn't take drugs, well, the other 50% didn't. That something happened to them anyway. So substance abuse, as you hear in the news, it's all over the place, right? It's fairly prevalent right now. This one is really sad. 2017 in Ontario, 14% of high school kids, they came from the Ministry of Education. 14%, about 89,000 kids report having seriously contemplated suicide. You got kids in high school, 89,000 of them. And then in 2018, about 4%, 25,000 having attempted suicide. There's 25,000 high school kids had attempted suicide in that year. To me, this is it's like a wake-up call, right? What are we doing? What's the government doing about that? Well, of course, there's nothing, right? More studies are required. But more than 75% of suicide involve male. But female tend to attempt 3 or 4 times more about self-harm, but not successful. But male tend to want to commit to go kill themselves. They're successful. Female tend to, I'm not sure exactly why. And here, after accident, the second leading cause of death for people 15 to 24 is suicide. For the age group of 10 to 14, suicide is a leading cause of death. Age 10 to 14. Why would a child that young be wanting to kill themselves? I mean, really deep soul searching as parents that you have a 10 or a 12 or 14-year-old, you have to ask the question, why would drive my child to kill themselves? And I have to tell you, the sad thing is that most of these parents didn't even know there was an issue. They didn't know it was an issue, right? All of a sudden they wake up one day, the child's not there anymore. Another thing is online gambling. And this one completely surprised me. Because online gambling is only legalized this year, 2023. So there is a lot of under the table stuff going on, right? People still online gambling through US sites and stuff. But this year, the Ontario government legalized online gambling. So they start tracking. Actually, they form all these gambling tracking. So all this information they get from the government. All the addiction problem with gambling I got from the government. So according to the Ontario government, online gambling revenue in the first year, which is this year, it's estimated to be $56 billion. I just said, I have no idea how big that is. Just in 1 year, 56 billion, and it's growing at double digit. So in addition, this is just the online gambling. Ontario government itself has online gambling site that generate another 510 million. And then in addition, another 4.6 million from selling lottery ticket, another $250 million from licensing, and this doesn't even count all the on-site gambling stuff, all the racetrack, casinos. That's crazy. In comparison, we spend $44 billion on food each year. We spend a lot more on gambling than we do on food. And yet we're complaining about people going hungry. But to me, that's huge. So you think about it, the people that promote gambling, they're going to want to protect those revenue. They're going to protect those growth. So they're driving people to go gamble. Well, who's being affected? So Responsible Gambling Council Ontario. Isn't that funny? That's a government agency. It's called Responsible Gambling. So they're not saying gambling is bad as long as you're responsible to gamble. That's okay, right? Right. Okay, remember I said no judgment, so sorry about that. Okay, youth who gamble start at age 12. High percentage of young people report having gambled in some form or experience harm for gambling before they reach 19. This came from our Ontario ministry that tracked responsible gambling. 41% of high school students have gambled in the last 3 months. That's a big number. Because if you have a phone, I've seen kids gamble on buses, on subway, right? You just quick place a bet, boom, done. All you have to do is put some money in the bank account, and you can gamble anytime. When you win something, the money go back into your bank account. When you lose something, of course, they take it from your bank account. They make it so easy, right? Online gambling is one of the strongest predictor of gambling problems in young adults. So if you start online gambling, it's a good predictor that you might run into a problem later. 61% of young people aged 18 to 24 have gambled. Gambling participation will increase during adolescence into adulthood. Like, this is just nuts. Men gamble twice as much as women and 3 times as likely to have gambling addiction as women. Boy. Next one, that impact our youth to create this whole thing about mental, kind of their decrease in the mental wellness, body shaming. It's a form of cyberbullying. You probably heard the term cyberbullying. I'm not sure how familiar with body shaming. But it affects mainly the females. So that's kind of one of the reasons why that they are much lower. Called the National Institute of Media is a U.S. institution. Survey of girls 9 and 10. They have been 40%. Girls 9 and 10. You can think about girl 9 and 10. My little girl Julia, she's 8. So that means that 1 year older than my grandchild Julia. Okay, so think about that. 40% had tried to lose weight. Like what? What would drive them to lose weight? Who is telling them that they're overweight? Like who are they listening that they're overweight? By age 13, 53% of American girls are unhappy with their body. Age 13. It just, like I was saying, even me, I was very surprised when I see what I research and do. And it's grown to 78% by the time they get to 17. Honestly, this is the body you get, right? If you're not happy with this body that you live with day in and day out 24/7, you can't get away from your own body. If 78% of them are not happy with their own body, 78% of them have mental health problem, right? Because you're living in a body that you got that you don't like. Yeah, there's no choice. You don't go to the store and buy a second body, right? Which some people try, right? Nearly 94% of teenage girls have been body shamed. That is sad, right? Body shame meaning that by their peers, they have received messages likely through social media because people tend to be kind of, coward. They don't want to face them face to face, but they body shame them through media, right? Because you can do it anonymously. 94% of teenage kids, a girl, have experienced it. 50% of the girls between 13 and 17 that they ridicule or bully because of their look. Girls who frequently read the glamour magazines tend to lose weight at 6 times more likely. Okay, the thing about what your kids read, right? It impacts them because of the age. Because of the age, they haven't really developed a sense of self yet, right? And this one is interesting. In Fiji, television was introduced in around 2000, year 2000. So when TV was widely introduced to Fiji, 11% of adolescent girls report about vomiting for weight control, 74% reporting desire, and the prevalence of disorder eating doubled. So why is the introduction of television all of a sudden create this bump? Well, the media, right? You gotta look like this. This is beautiful. This is not. So the impact of body shaming is having an impact on the mental health of our girls. Impact of social media. Are you sitting down for this one? This is a doozy. So the reason I say earlier about being pervasive, you take out this number about user. So Facebook founded in 2004. By June 2017, so 13 years later, they have 2 billion users monthly. 2 billion users monthly. So about a third of the world population is using it on a monthly basis. And then there are 3 billion by this year. So almost half of the world population at any time on a monthly basis on Facebook. I'm not one of them. So if I get on, there'll be 2.95.0000001. TikTok has 1.66 billion users and Twitter has 150. I mean, that's why it's so pervasive. It's everywhere. I mean, think about you go on Facebook, connect with family, it's everywhere. Social media, the way it works is that they want you absolutely focused on the screen. Because focus, there is actually a program to track your eye movement when you're on the screen. The more focused you are, the more money the social media company make, because the more ad revenue they can generate, because they are grabbing you, you are on the screen, you're focusing on them, right? So to them, they need you to be focused. And so therefore, that's why the screen is like this. So it shuts out everything else, peripheral. You don't see anything else by what's on here. They need you to focus on them, right? So think about your children. Either when they're watching TV or when they're on the screen, you try to talk to them, they don't hear you, right? The ability to grab their attention. And this whole idea that, hey, I'm important, is that what? Sometimes I do that, certainly at work, you post something and you wait to see how many people like or come back to you, right? And you get a little anxious and no one click on like and say, what's going on here? So this whole idea is that you want people to interact with you. And so the like and all that really confirm that you are somebody. Because all your social networks, see how many people like it. Right? See how many people like your post. So that means that you are important. The thing is, I don't know, you know, the social media, when you post something, all of a sudden it just disappears, it's gone. So you have to keep posting stuff. For you to be current, you have to constantly invent content. You're constantly doing that, right? So that's how they hook you to keep using them. And of course, there's a false sense of intimacy and privacy. That's why kids get caught with posting very intimate pictures of themselves or messages. All of a sudden, the surprise that the world knows what they say. Well, once you go on the internet, as I used to tell my team at work, don't send an email if you don't want your own mother to read it. Because I can tell you right now, you think you're sending a private email, the moment it hit the net, it goes anywhere. And this just happened a couple of days ago. A former engineer had to testify to Congress. And this is what he said. He used to work at the Meta, like at Facebook. I can safely say that Meta's executive knew the harm that teenagers were experiencing. That there were things that they could do that are very doable, and they chose not to do them to make it clear that we can't trust them with our children. This guy is an engineering director at that company, and he quit and he left them. So I look at that and I say, wow, okay, to me it has some weight, because there's someone fairly high up in that organization telling you you cannot trust your kids with them. Adam Adler wrote this book called Irresistible. It's a pretty cool book. You got to take a look at it. It just all explains how social media is designed so that create addiction, create a hook. How they design the page, how they design the interaction, all with a sense of get you to hook to stay with them. And we talk about like this day, and people don't getting anxious when no one ever get back to you. And of course, then the young adult making unrealistic, right? Because now you see images from all over the world. Well, why they look so good over there, and I don't know what's good. So all of a sudden, instead of comparing to your neighbor's kid, your children are comparing to kids all around the world. To drive attention, they're posting outrageous items, right? You see this, eh? So, you got to do something outrageous for people to notice, right? So hanging yourself off the CN Tower is just not quite good enough. I need to find something a little taller, a little more outrageous to hang myself off, right? Jump from this building to that building. And this one, right, because of the social media, scalability, immediacy, online criticism. If someone didn't like the way you dress, you got one person talk to you that didn't like you. Now, you can instantly be exposed to tens of millions of people that don't like the way you dress and believe that they have an opinion about the way that they don't like you. And all of a sudden, they start sending you messages. All of a sudden, you get inundated with all these hate coming at you. And so this whole idea about fear of missing out, because social media, like I said, right, you get to see all everybody else is doing. Oh, I found out they have a party, but they didn't invite me. Why didn't they invite me? And so U of T, this just came out on Monday. U of T professor led a study, the largest of its kind, over 50,000 people, 195 countries. They found that 56% of Canadian women, 33% of men between the age 18 to 22 have problematic usage of social media, meaning that they can't put it down. They have addiction problem. 56% of Canadian at age of 18 to 22. You can't see this. I honestly, I'm not very good with chart in Excel. I spent 2 hours trying to recreate this chart, and I just couldn't, so finally gave up. What this is saying is it's affecting happiness among teens. So these are teenage kids and their well-being, and it dropped suddenly around the time when smartphones became common in 2011. Interesting. So they can correlate this, and the reason they found that is that they asked 8th and 9th grader, okay? No, 8th and 10th grader, what makes you happy? What activity makes you happy? And this is very interesting. The ones that the green are make them happy, the one in red to make them unhappy. The ones that make them happy are stuff that they do with people. They categorize, oh, these are things that, the ones that make them unhappy are things that they do alone. And then we take a look at why are they not happy being alone? Well, because they had the phone. So these are activities they do with the phone by themselves. So just to them, it was just a great snapshot of the impact of smartphone, how it impacts the mental health of our children in grade 8 and grade 10. It's with and without people. And the one interest one on here is listening to music. They find that it brings them happiness when they go to concert with friends, same music. But they found it the most unhappy when they listen to music by themselves on their phone. Interesting. So that might be the lyric, but being with people bring them happiness. I'll give you about 2 minutes. So that is the end of, well, there's a lot more, but we just have to kind of truncate it. What our youth in general in Canada are seeing today, and what are they experiencing? And to me, the degree of impact, they are just like a consumer, a target. They are a target for large businesses that are trying to get them. And they try to get them in an age of which that they cannot discern as well right from wrong. They're developing that. So they want them at that age. And unfortunately, because of social media and smartphone devices, your child can be on the phone without you knowing what they're doing. They can be on a computer, they can be on an iPad. You would think they do homework or they're talking to friends. But I was looking into blocking software. You know, you can filtering software. As many as there are filtering software, there's software to help kids to hide those filtering software, to get around them. So a little icon might look like a Word document. You click on that, all of a sudden it's opened up to something completely different. So there are all kinds of people around the world that are very much interested in helping your children to hide things from you. And so that's the challenge that our youth and our children are facing. Any questions, comments? Now, by the way, all these slides I'll be sharing with you guys And so you can have any of this, and I think they're taking videos as well of the sessions. And if you want more information, talk to me or Cam H. Information, you want any kind of the more dealing with more deep in something, absolutely. Mike?
It really is thought-provoking, all this information. I can remember in my youth, in this kind of age, we just went and played baseball or road hockey or skated on the pond. We were with people all the time.
Yeah.
We didn't have any other choice.
Yeah.
Well, you could have been home in your room by yourself, I guess, but it's just a totally different world.
Yeah.
We really need to think about that.
Yeah. And it happened so fast. This happened within the last about 25 years, right? Think about that. So we as parents, government agencies, we are not quick enough to catch up to help our children to understand what they face with. Okay? I hope your bladders are fairly large. Because we are likely not going to be able to have a break. Okay? Just so I'll let you know. Yeah, although if you really need to, the bathroom's on the other side of this wall. Okay. The second thing is that we're looking at how are all these trends and stuff impacting our youth, Christians youth now. So this information that coming from youth under 25 that grew up in the church. So they don't necessarily attending church anymore, but they grew up in whatever denomination. So this is kind of why. Okay? Overall, the world is a global village. I mean, we all know this now, right? And so because they are so savvy with technology, that technology targeting. So I still remember the first time I gave Logan an iPad. We were on a plane to BC. My sister was getting married. And Logan, he was not even 2 years old. And so I got this bubble game, the bubble, and he would have to pop them like that. So I had an iPad with me, 5.5 hour flight. And what do you do with a 2-year-old? Well, so we were sitting there, we're doing the bubble thing. I was shocked. It took me a while to figure out how to turn on the iPad and all that stuff. He was less than 2. He instantly went like this. I was like, how did he know? Like, how was that possible? And he was doing like this, like he was touching stuff. He was looking, but how does he know that? I didn't know that. I had to learn all that stuff. So they have spent billions of dollars to research of what will hook children, what will work for them, intuitive, right? You hear the Apple products are very intuitive. Well, because they really work hard to get them. And so they now have access to the global village. And I was telling a couple of people, I just went on just to test it, right? I went on the web and I just type in, are homosexuality acceptable within the church? Less than, 0.003 seconds. I can't remember, 16 million reply, right? Hits, right? And the top page, which is about 20 hits or so, and all of them had the view that it belonged in the church and how all the. So I'm just telling you right now, if I have access to that, your children have access to that. They want to search pornography, boom. All the websites, pornographic websites are completely all available to them, right? We talk about online gambling. So a company held belief because of they being exposed to all these things around the world. And the survey of over 2,000 youth, Christian youth, this is what they believe. This is the God they believe. God exists, and He create and He put orders in place, and He watch over humankind. But God wants people to be good and nice and fair to each other as taught in the Bible, but also by most world religions are teaching the same thing. The central goal of life is to be happy and to feel good about yourselves. And God doesn't really particularly involve in us unless we needed Him to help us to solve a problem or something. and I'd like find a parking spot. God, good, that was a joke. Yeah. You guys. Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah.
Some people take it seriously.
And good people go to heaven when they die. Hey? Ultimate truth. You can't say your belief is the only right one and all others are wrong. Your belief don't matter. What matters is being a good person. So there's no ultimate truth. All religions are equal. We have the same goal. All of us is strive to believe in God. And then some of you might know this name, Josh McDowell. We use some of his material in our Sunday school. In 2006, he published his book. 63% of teenage Christians don't believe that Jesus is the Son of God. 51% don't believe he rose from the dead. Half, right? 68% don't believe the Holy Spirit is real. And only 33% say the church will have some kind of role to play in their lives. These are Christian kids. Premarital sex. The church teaching against premarital sex is unrealistic. It's not a big deal nowadays, right? Times have changed, church needs to catch up. Actually, the church needs to catch up. I see that fairly often through the study and the response from the kids. Homosexuality, right? Everyone has a right to choose. So the choice of gay and lesbian should be accepted by all. Gay marriage, social equality, right? Our government preached social equality, all of us equal. And it got to be upheld by the church. And I was taught whatever's in the Bible, now this is an interesting comment by one young person. I was taught that whatever is in the Bible is the truth. So not for the church to treat people in the same-sex relationship bad, but to say that it was okay was kind of hypocritical to me. So there's somebody saw, hey, there's something not quite right with this assumption. And here, I'm not sure you can see it, but so because it's across the country, across all the denomination, we fall into this group called evangelical. So they classify the Church of Christ in this. So we're in this tradition. So when you talk about churches should allow people who are practicing gay or lesbian lifestyle to participate fully in the ministry, 60% of the youth agree that people within our tradition, 60% agree that gay and lesbian people should be allowed to fully participate in ministries. About gender roles, to say men is the head of the home and women need to be submissive is degrading. The idea that men and women are equal but have different roles, it really just a way to say there's a power imbalance, right? So it's just a ploy, right? To say women's primary roles to be a wife and mother is demeaning. So they see this whole idea about gender role, about equality. In their mind, equality is equality in all things, right? And again, within the church, right, women should allow to hold the same leadership positions as men. Remember, right, no judgment. You gotta have to look at the data as it is, right? And then we need to understand a little more about that. So again, our people that belong to our kind of tradition, there's 86%. 86% believe that the women and men should have the same opportunity for leadership within the church. So that's a very quick snapshot of what the trends that they see in the world, how is it filtering into the congregations and into the church sphere, how is influencing the thinking of young people. Because you think about young people, they at the tip of the spear. Right? Right now, just because of what Mike said about what we used to do, what young people used to do, what we're being exposed now versus what I used to be exposed to, they are really the first. They're almost the, what's that bird in the mine that die first? Canary. Right? They are the canary of the church, right? They are the one that will hit and get these trends being impacted them the quickest. So if they're saying this, you can see the impact is going up. And then when we look at the third study, we talk about parenting faith. you're seeing that that's impacting some of the younger parents now. They take it because they're kind of going from young person now to become parents themselves, right? Questions, comments, thoughts? Mark?
So we talk about, the kids can go and get this stuff on the internet and everywhere. And I think, and some of you know my involvement in the past with education and curriculum. And you think about how often we cover some of these topics. If we don't cover them, where do they go looking to find that information? If parents don't know, and you look at some of the time cycles of some of the studies that we do is like, we try to get through the New Testament or the Bible, and I think we kind of joked, here we took like 14 years or something to do the whole thing, right? Well, that doesn't give you a lot of time for some repetition. So,
Right.
When do you cover the gender roles, or when do you cover the sexuality, or when do you cover that? So, it's one of those things like, where do they go to find that information? Who's giving it to them? It's readily available all the time.
Yeah.
And we're unprepared to deal with that.
And the thing is, in the study, and we didn't touch on it, but they talked to the young people about this, right? And all of them categorically say, we want to know more. But whenever we bring it up with our parents or with a church, we get shut down. We just couldn't get them to talk about this. All they're saying is that it's wrong. It's wrong. Don't want to talk about it. It's not wrong. Bible said it's wrong. And so they're saying, we want, and we might touch on it a little later, but certainly tomorrow. We want a safe place. We want a place where we can go. And they also say, we know there might not be an answer. So we're not looking for an answer, but we are looking for a place and people that we can talk to honestly and have a view on the topic. And they're frustrated, they're not getting it. Then you're right. If they're not getting from the parents, they're not getting from the church, where are they going to get that from? They go, there instantly, there would be millions of people want to tell them what they think, right? So, yeah.
One of the points you highlighted reminded me of a thing we heard at a conference last week, where children report that their parents will have sort of, ambivalent or not very critical views of gays or gender identity issues, and they'll think that, okay, but we said this was the thing in the Bible,
Right.
but now I don't see you're sort of watering it down. This conference we were at last week was like, you're not doing anyone any favors by backsliding on what you're holding to be true.
Yeah.
And I think out of, on the one side, like you just said, sometimes as parents, we can be like, it's just wrong, and
Yeah.
shut down the conversation. But at the other side of the coin, we can feel the temptation to just soften the blow
Right.
of having
Right.
a hard conversation by not calling out behavior that we believe is wrong. And so that can lead to that sense of
Yeah.
hypocrisy.
You will see it in the next section, and it comes out very clear what Christian parents tried to do, and that comes out very, very clear. And the kids in the first two survey also said, and each one of them about 200 pages long, so there were a lot of information. And you can borrow them, you can use them. I have them in electronic form as well. You want to see the electronic form. And I just asked that if I send it to you, that you don't send it in distribution, that's all. But, so they're saying that not only do they want to have a conversation, they want someone to stand on something. They want just what is it? Instead of, well, this, so they want somebody, whether we agree or not, it doesn't matter, but just we need someone to have a stand and explain why they stand on them. Yeah. Any other comments? Questions? Okay, we are flying. I'm so proud of you, man, for keeping your mouth shut. Yeah? But you gotta keep your eyes open though. Okay, you gotta keep your mouth shut, keep eye open, okay? So remember that you can do both at the same time. Okay, the last one is really asking for you, what's the influence for you to stay in the church, stay in the faith, for you to leave? What are the key? There are a whole bunch of them. They listed a ton of them and a lot of data in each one. So I'm just gonna isolate to three that are key to us. But this is very interesting. This came out loud and clear. Finally, the researcher, just exactly what Mike was talking about. The researcher was finding out what changed. Yeah, social media changed, yeah. But what really had changed? What they found, what changed was that 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when kids grew up, they really kind of went into the family business or went into the farm. They get married, they got a house, so they automatically transition to being an adult much quicker. Fewer people went to post-secondary education. So when they were negotiating their faith for themselves as an adult, when they're doing that, they were still in the late teens, early 20s. They're still living at home. They're likely with the home church. So they are likely surround the people that love them, that they could talk to when they were negotiating their own faith. Today, when that critical stage in their life, they are likely not at home. They're likely at university or they likely would have moved out, got a job. The mobility nowadays are much more increased compared to what it was before. So now, when our children, when our young people are negotiating their faith, they don't have the loving community like they used to have. They are away. They are really being left on their own. And so they call this, I can't remember what emerging adulthood. Yeah, emerging adulthood is a new phase that they're now discovering that is the critical phase of which our young people are finding their own faith. And they're finding that at that critical juncture, they are being left alone. Worst, they're being influenced by forces that are not friendly to the faith base that they came from. So important partners that influence how well a young adult will retain his or her faith. The presence of a mentor, okay? So we're going to touch on that a bit. So a mentor is a trusted adult other than their parents. The community of which they are part of. So I just highlight four: the church community, the youth group attendance, their youth group as a community to them, the Christian camp. I'll tell you some statistics, it's very interesting. The kids that attended a youth group or Christian camp, and the higher learning institution. And sometimes we don't look at the higher learning institution, but I'll show you some stats about professors in college where what they believe are personal. And so obviously that influence our children. And then influence of parents. Influence parents is actually by far the largest influencer according to the surveys. But I left the last because it's the biggest chunk, so I kind of leave it to the end. It's not that it's the least important. Presence of a mentor, apparently especially important. The kids found the presence of the mentor especially important when they were moving away from home, going to university. They find that it was so important to them that a trusted adult would pick up the phone or send them an email to the touch point to see how they're doing. And not just saying hello, but really want to help them develop that they already had a relationship with when they moved away. And so these are kind of things that they're saying, right? Transition, a multi-year mentor need to stay. So it is not just, hey, kind of nice to see you, the potluck bye, right? What a mentor relationship is a multi-years. You staying with this child and you investing in this child and you see them grow up and you're there to counsel, to advise, and they can call you and contact you and discuss with you, and you stay with them until they become a family of their own. And the key thing is that they provide a voice other than the parents. Sometimes your parent keep right? Having someone other than your parents say something. I'm sure you all experienced that. You probably say it 10,000 times, do this thing, right? All of a sudden, one day, your kid came home and said, hey, Dad, I got to do this. He said, I know I've been telling you this. Oh, no, you didn't. Teacher so-and-so told me that this is important. I got to do it. Now I got to do it. Oh, okay, all right, yeah, right? So having another trusted adult's voice is very important. Influence of the community, the church, right? And here's all the kind of things that the kids, negative and positive. I was surprised when I saw that, how much they yearn for the truth, how much they want the teaching. They said that we like the sermon. I thought, kids like sermon. We like sermons that are applicable. We really like sermon that if the pastor can point out how we can apply it in our lives. We really enjoy that. And the other thing that it surprised me a little bit, is this cross-generational support. Categorically, they said how important it was for them to have an older adult at the church that's shown a love and care for them. Right? It just, that warmed my heart, right? It feels good that they actually appreciate that. But of course, there are other things about, they find the church very judgmental, right? Very exclusive. And so those are kind of things that turn them away. Now, youth group attendance. So you're going to take a look at kids that attend. Sometimes I'm going to have to walk you through this chart a little bit, but we just take a quick look. Church youth group participation correlate to religious service attendance as a young adult. That means that how often do they attend a youth group? How often? Weekly, 1 to 3 times a week, or less than monthly. And correlate that to, when they grew up, how often do they attend church? And you see, if they attend at least weekly, a youth group, 51% of them attend church regularly. Pretty big number, right? Compared to if they don't attend as often, more than double, right? So attending youth group has an impact of the young adults of remaining within the church. And this one, youth group that focus on Jesus, is more successful than those emphasize fun activities only. See, sometimes we think that, for kids to come together, youth group, they got to be fun. And then we somehow tucked in a little bit of Bible story at the end, right? Because we got them. So they're saying no. Actually, we want youth group that focus on Jesus, right? You see, strongly agree 52% and moderately agree 32% in evangelical. So you got 87% kids, kind of like that, to have the focus on Jesus. So think about that when we've put together youth group activity. And another one is Christian camp. We have this camp called OMA. And this is pretty cool, kind of in terms of impact and the reasoning that they gave quite a few here, right? Because they were the peers, and their peers having the same kind of value as they are, right? So for a while, they can kind of get away and to be with their friends. And it's a natural environment for mentoring relationship to arise because you have the camp counselor. I wasn't a very good counselor. I almost got kicked out at camp at Oma. Yeah, if you got $5, you give me $5, I'll tell you what happened, but it wasn't good. It wasn't good. It was Bill Bunting's son, too. Remember Bill Bunting? A preacher's son. They're the worst. Yeah, sorry. They don't, not all preachers. But I almost got kicked off. I got $5 up. And who was the camp director? Zach. Anyway, I know I can see his face. His name escaped me from him. I gave him a heart attack. That poor director. I don't think he ever directed camp again. Okay, so take a look at the stats. So Christian camp attendance increased connection to Christian group and the youth go on a higher education. So what they've done is that kids that attend a Christian camp or as a staff at a Christian camp, when they went to university, how likely are they in going to find on their own a Christian group on campus, and how likely are they to go find a local congregation to worship if they were a Christian camper or a staff? You think about that, right? It is the number. Just camp staff. You just look at this one. Connecting the local church after the first move. I remember they're on their own, right? If they were a camp staff, they're 59%. 59% of them at the Catholic, but evangelical, 72% of them went and find a local church. If they're not camp staff, they're 38. Again, double. So Christian camp had an impact on the youth when they leave home in terms of the direction they wanted to go. Okay, so you gotta, it's a parents, when your kids are going to university, you gotta pay attention to this. This is, most faculty believed in God, but atheism is 5 times more prevalent among faculty than the general public. So they're 5 times more. Some of you work at university, you kind of probably know some of this. Faculty feels warmly about religious group, pretty much all religious group, except evangelical Christians. Well, kind of us. So we're not in the good books. This is the only religious group about which the majority of non-evangelical faculty have negative feelings. Okay? So tell your kids, don't tell the professor you're from the Church of Christ. Okay? Although faculty general oppose religion in public sphere, many endorse the idea that Muslims should express their religious belief in American politics. So this is an American survey. It's interesting, eh? So no one else should express their religious view, but Muslims, okay. We actually encourage them. They actually endorse the idea that Muslims should express their religious belief. I mean, you probably have heard across campuses around the world, the protest against this whole Israel-Hamas war, pro-Hamas, right, pro-Palestinian. So maybe that's kind of where it's coming from. So your professor, I remember when I went to university, my professor was my hero. I did a doctoral degree. I spent 4 years with him. He was my hero. I worshipped him. Although he's kind of agnostic, but I was like, whatever he said, like I had my notepad following him, taking notes. So think about the impact that he would have on me if he had said something about God, about the direction that I should go, right? So yeah, they do have some. According to the study by this guy called Neil Gross and Solomon Simons, only 6% of college professors say the Bible is the actual word of God. 51% say it's just an ancient book of fables and legends and stuff, right? So these are the people that are teaching the kids when they go to university. Okay, so here's just a bunch of questions, a quick one, okay? What do you do when a student in your Sunday school class tells you your Bible is outdated? It's out of touch with what's going on. What if that Sunday school kid is your kid or your grandkid telling you this? What do you do? What do you do when your son is using ChatGPT to do an essay? And he said, well, why are you doing that? Well, because all my friends are doing that, right? As a matter of fact, I was talking to some teacher, they actually they like the kids use ChatGPT to do an essay. But the key is, as long as they proofread it afterward. I just don't like when they're doing it, I just hand it in. Okay, yeah. Your daughter's best friend want to be called Richard instead of used to be Rebecca. What do you do? I'm not dreaming all this up. Your preteen child is asking for a smartphone. Everyone has one. What do you do? And your son wants to go to the Pride Parade because his friends all go and they're all having a lot of fun. It's just like Santa Claus Parade, right? Pride Parade in Toronto is the largest gathering in North America, but a lot of people go. It seems in the television area seems to have a tremendous amount of fun, right? My football team at practice is on Sunday mornings. And your second grader wanted to know what is LGBTQTS2+. I bet most of you don't know what that is. I had to really look it up and understand what's LGBTQTS2+. A guy dressed in women's clothes coming to our class and read to us. Isn't that interesting, right? Like, I didn't dream this up. Like, this is happening now, guys, right? So what do you do when these are happening, right? So influence of parents. So now let's look at parents, the study from the 3 survey. 3 factors impact the successful transmission of faith. Strong, intentional bond between family and church, right? Religious activity are built around family. And high family involvement in religious education. Okay? So, key number one, you help your kids to trust God and create a kind of environment. They're able to explore faith, but they're safe. They trust while they're working with you because they trust you. It's a high intentional bond, right? Strong intentional bond. Sometimes we outsource Christian education to Bible school program. Well, Bible school program is 40 minutes a week? That's all they get. Emphasis on parents' role modeling, evidence in the investment in tradition and the articulation of his faith, right? Which is very important. It's not they just see you attending church, articulation of your faith. You got to be able to explain. You got to be able to tell them. And this is some of the comment. Parents love our church prayer and a model, love for church prayer and scripture. My parents are changed by their time with God. Isn't that, I love that comment. If your child know your time with God had changed you, how much do you think that's impact them? If not enough to go to church, if we're going to behave inappropriately the rest of the time, okay? My parents speak openly about their faith and invite dialogue. Isn't that wonderful, right? My parents include us in faith practices. So that's cool. Influence of parents, positive and negative. So the last one, the value given family solidarity characterized a warm emotional relationship, frequent interaction, help, and assistance, right? Honest conversation on difficult topics. Parents being overprotective. Now, sometimes we tend to do that, right? It's called the helicopter parents, you know? Because then they're not allowed to fail. But what they're looking for is a way to interact with you that they can come to you without having to lie to you and tell them they made a mistake. So here's some of the influence that you see fairly stark within the survey. This is the first one. Attendance at services carried out by parental spiritual discipline cluster. So if the parents' spiritual discipline is high, this is 60. So 76% of the kids by the time they get a young adult still remain with the church. If the discipline is low, you have 11%. 7 times, right? Pretty big difference. So your spiritual discipline impact your children habits with church with their church attendance, at least certainly with church attendance. Frequency of the Bible reading. If a parent is high, their child is up to 70%. If it's low, you're talking, what's that, about 20%, right? So if they see you read the Bible all the time, it's likely that they're going to read the Bible. If they see you private prayers, if they see you spend time in prayer, over 89%? 89% of them will practice that because you model them. Versus if you're low, they are low too. So think about that. Think about your impact, your influence. This is dramatic. It is crazy how much you have impact on your children just by doing or not doing. And this just, I scratched my head when I saw this. So this is where we're now going back. You're talking about the parents, about wishy-washy, about going back and forth. So they asked parents, this is 1,217 parents across Canada. How important is to you, do you believe that you are the one to raise your kid to be a Christian? What do you think? How important is it to you? 99% say important. Oh, very important for me. Very important for me to model my faith. 99%, very important for me to model my faith. 99% say very important for me to teach them my faith. And 97% say it's important for me to include them in church activity, to bring them to the church. So overwhelming, they believe they're the one. God-given rights that I am the one to help my child. So that's what they say, but this is complete. I was just like I said, scratch my head. But when they say, but they also want their children to have a robust exposure to a variety of religious faith. But so it doesn't come to try the first. So the people that strongly agree, they're about 8%. So combined, there's about 42%. 42% of the parents, I just agree, strongly agree, that I want to expose my children to a robust understanding of other religious faith. But when you say I'm 99%, I'm very important to teach them about Christian values, and all of a sudden you turn around, well, almost half of them say, no, but I want them to have a robust exposure to other religions. And then this asks them, there's a sense that within the survey that parents don't want to coerce. And they ask them, what do you mean by coerce your children into being a Christian? Well, we don't want to preach to them. They're going to have to find their own faith. But they said 99% is important to model and to teach, and to 97% to have them a local church. But yet, on the other hand, this is 20-some percent, and this is 45%. So over 60% of the parents surveyed say that, no, I don't really want to pressure them. They need to find their own, they all need to find their own way, right? To me, it doesn't jive. Like the answers don't kind of work practically. Okay, but the detail in the survey, and here are some of the detail of what you actually see, what parents actually do. And so they talk about modeling. And because they have this tendency, they don't want to coerce, they tend to use strictly modeling to convey faith. So the assumption is that when I do certain things, my children will draw the right conclusion without me telling them. Okay? Well, that's conclusion, right? Assumption, right or wrong, but. And our children see parents modeling as the most important, because their assumption is that if I'm modeling, they will follow me, right? But my modeling must be important, more important than other people that do modeling too as well, right? So the parent is assuming that I am the most important one. But sometimes it's not, right? Children will learn only the behavior that I want them to learn. So I'm with them 24/7. I'm doing all kinds of stuff, but I know my kids only pick up the positive. They don't model the bad stuff that I do. They only pick up the good modeling. And the children will learn equally. And then it's clear in the survey that the parents themselves struggle. I can't imagine the kids must be. Because what happens when the father doesn't go to church, the mother does. Which one is the modeling that the child should follow? So the surveyor said, you really need to teach. You need to explain. So they asked them, if teaching is 99% important, what do you teach? And they find what they teach are the very basic. So there are 66 books in the Bible. Here's a New Testament, here's the Old Testament. Okay, this is, if you want to go pray, this is what you do. You close your eye, you fold your hand. And then we pray at dinner, we give blessing. That's the extent of the teaching. They find that they don't go beyond to explain, to articulate. So, like interpreting religious skill development, such as learning to interpret the Bible, to confessing sins, are absent. So they don't take them to explain. Rather, they just do the very basic because they don't want to coerce. Oh, okay, this is, all right. My 2-minute warning. But you know, in football, 2-minute warning, it's actually 30 minutes, right? Susan also always says, oh, it's only 2 minutes left. Well, kind of yes and no. Yeah, so this is my 2-minute warning. Okay, moral standard, and this is the other thing that comes out about teaching. Is interesting enough that most of the Christian parent survey, 1,217, equate to moral teaching as religious teaching. They don't see moral outcome is actually, moral standard is an outcome of, so remember what we talked about earlier, that the kids believe all good people go to heaven? That's exactly what this is, right? So being moral or being a Christian to them is the same thing. But it's far from the same thing. Being a Christian, you will become a better moral person, but being a moral person doesn't mean that you are a Christian. But the Christian parents are now confusing with the two and teaching the kids in such. So their teaching is teaching them about being a good moral person and believing that that's teach them Christian value. And the last one, even though they said 97% to say it's integrated with the congregation or church community is important to them, but really they see it as just a place for socialization. It's a place for kids to have a place to meet friends. But only a handful of parents surveyed actually take the initiative to introduce their children to the church and to engage them into activity. Parents generally believe they're doing a good job. Now, this is interesting. So the survey asked them, if you were given unlimited resources and time and effort, will you change anything the way that you raise your child up in the faith? Will you change anything? The parents that are very engaged with the church, they attend church frequently, they're very engaged with the church, they said, yeah, if given more resources, more time, I will change, right? Only 20% of them say, no, I don't think I'll change, I've done a good job, okay? For the people that really never go to church, they answer, you're given more resources, more time. Will you change the way that you bring your child up in the faith? 52% of them say, well, no, I've done a very good job. They're very confident. They're very confident that they're a good job in raising their child in the faith. For the ones that don't ever attend church, 52% very strongly believe they've done a good job. About 29% believe that they've done a moderately good job in raising their child, but they never go to church. So it's interesting that the people that are more engaged with the church are less confident, really want to improve better, and the ones that really not engaged believe that they've done a very good job, they don't need any help. When asked about what indicates success of these Christian parents, 74% of them say being a Christian. But again, they were confusing of being a moral person in their mind is actually being a Christian, right? And then they talk about the distinction between a good Christian and a good person was unclear to them. They couldn't quite explain the difference between the two. Other times, the children's happiness, financial success came in before faith. When asked their view on digital technology and social media, which is a huge one, there's a whole chapter dedicated to that. And they are really conflicted, and they are really at a loss. And I think most parents I talk to still are. So they see technology as a tool for learning and for financial success. A lot of them introduce phones and laptops and stuff to the kids early because they believe it's a necessity for them to be successful in life. They feel helpless to controlling content. They talk a lot about all the different strategy. They find that none of them work. Because remember when we were watching TV as a family, you watch, say, 1 hour TV, we're all in the same room. So for you to control content, it was easy. You sit there and you watch with them, you don't like it, you turn it off, you change channel. On a phone, if you got 3 kids, they each spend an hour on this thing, you got 3 hours worth of content that you have to go through, not one. And by the way, you have to sitting cheek to cheek with them to see what they're seeing, and most of them use earbuds, so you don't even hear what they're saying. So you have to borrow the earbud, and by the way, not all 3 of them can be on the internet at the same time because you can only be one at a time. So they find that it's absolutely challenging They cannot control content. They're just at a loss. They don't have answer. And most of them, instead of controlling content, they control time, right? When you're 12 years old, you only get 20 minutes on the phone. When you're older, you get more time. So they use time rather than trying to take a look at the content. So just the same thing. It is very difficult. So tomorrow, we're going to spend some time talk about this among yourselves. What are some of the things we can help our children? Because the phone isn't going away. iPad, the internet is not going away, trust me. How can we teach them enough value so that they can discern? And this is interesting. So this is kids by the time, this is not that when they have a phone, it's when the parents allow them to have their own social media account, meaning that they can interact directly with outside parties. So people that attend church the least, the kids are the youngest in terms of having their own media account. So the people that homeschool has the highest age group before the child is allowed to have a direct social media account, have a Facebook account, TikTok account, interact directly with outside world. So we're just coming to a close now. Why? He said, why start with me? You know, my child is an adult. I'm not my brother's keeper. I'm not my child's keeper. Like what? So why start with me? Ephesians 6:4. I don't know. It can't be clearer than this. He said, instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Well, it is you. It's nobody else. Your father, and I would say this applies to mother as well. Bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Unless you cut that verse out of your Bible. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, right? Deuteronomy 6:7. Commandment I give you today to be on your heart. Impress them on your children. I don't know how else you can interpret it. Impress them on your children. And you're going to talk about them. Remember we talked about teaching. You're going to teach them. You're going to teach them. Doesn't matter where you are. And then in verse 20, this is very interesting. In the future, why are we doing all this? Well, in the future, when your son asks you, what is the meaning of the stipulation, decree, and law of the Lord our God has commanded you, and you tell him. See, the whole idea is that you are the one to educate your children. But the last side is, and this is challenging you, and the elders gave me the permission to challenge you. If you are not a disciple, you cannot teach someone else to be a disciple. So you need to ask that question, am I a disciple? A disciple is not a pew warmer, right? A disciple is not just coming here on Sunday morning and plop down and they just go. This is a disciple. I got all this from the New Testament. They pattern their lives after Jesus and over time become more like the teacher and less of oneself, reaching this thing Paul called maturity. So does that apply to you? Being baptized? Immersed in Jesus' teaching. Are you immersing in Jesus' teaching? Because remember, when you do that, your child follow, right? Then are you making other disciples? Right? The Great Commission. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations and baptizing them and teaching them, right? Reminding them of what I taught you. Active participation in the community of disciples of church. Acts, the book of Acts, that's what it talked about. Are you doing that? Do you love each other? Because that's what Jesus said, right, in John. If you love each other, they will know that you are my disciples. Disciples have various gifts and contributing to the effectiveness of the whole. Are you doing that? Do you have gifts that you don't use for the church, for the body, for the greater good? A disciples will be seen and known by others, not anonymous. There's no closet disciples. Remember Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, you are the salt of the earth. You are a city on a hill. You are the light on a stand. There's no hiding that. I don't know, maybe you interpret it different ways, but I look at that and say, no, it can't be anonymous. I'm sorry I kept you 5 minutes longer, and we're going to still have a closing prayer, but it's a lot, right? It's a lot. It's burdensome. Some of it is very dark, I have to say. But if we don't open our eyes, ostriches don't solve problem, right? At least I want you to engage and find and read for yourself, like the Bereans, Paul commended them for digging the scripture themselves. You need to open your eyes, and you need to understand what your children are being faced with. Otherwise, we can't help them. So that's really what this is. And I really hope and pray this is not the end for you. That you continue to pay attention. Ask questions when they come home. Ask them. Spend time with them. Pray with them out of their mealtime, right? And so do the things as a disciple, as the gift that God gave you. So I really do hope that it's been useful to you. I hope that you're not discouraged, that there is absolutely hope, because Ephesians 6, right? The armor of God is at your disposal. So thank you very much, Mike. Time to you.